Before the ETSU Tennessee game, my next guest, Dan Harralson, was kind enough to have me as a guest on his Vols Wires podcast. I look to return the favor. It's an old rivalry. Tennessee and Auburn. And some Vols fans look at the struggle of the Tigers and think maybe the Vols have a chance to end their 11-game conference losing streak. And I guess the question is, Dan Harralson, VolsWire.com, how likely do you think that is, that this could be the week that the Vols finally get a W?
Well, Tennessee definitely has a shot in this matchup against Auburn. Auburn has some issues of their own, and few things that they need to figure out to get in the right direction after losing at Mississippi State, and obviously losing at home by 1 point to LSU. Not a start that they had imagined to be in after a pretty good win on a neutral side in Atlanta against a pretty good Washington team. So it's kind of interesting to see how that transpired for Auburn this year. But they do have more talent than Tennessee, but Tennessee's going to give a little bit more effort. That's something that Auburn's going to have to try to match up with. And really, in my mind, it comes down to the quarterback position, really for both teams. And Jerry Garantano really needs to step up in this matchup in a game that, if he plays well enough and gets guys out on the perimeter and really gets the running game going, and being a field general, I think Tennessee has a shot.
Well, let me ask, you say a field general. To me, Garantano has been more of a game manager. Basically has not thrown long. Did for one pass against ETSU and another against UTEP when the coverage was suspect. But certainly that's how he suffered his 2 interceptions against Florida and such. It almost seems to me that the Tennessee offense this year is designed to give Garantano the best passer rating he possibly can. Short passes, no deep drops, that sort of thing. I mean, do you get the feeling that Tennessee is going to show another wrinkle to their offense against Auburn, or is it still going to be kind of the conservative Tennessee offense that really we saw ever since Garantano took over the team back last year?
Yeah, knowing Tyson Helton and this offense that he runs, going back to working with him at UAB, it's just, there's so much more that's not being done as far as philosophy-wise and just going, extending the field a little bit more and a little bit more tempo. And Trey Smith, the great offensive lineman who's been a little bit banged up, he even mentioned after the Georgia game, we got to go faster, we got to get more tempo. So that tells me right there that they've been practicing this. Now, I just don't know if they have total confidence in Jerry Garantano right now to expand this playbook. And we kind of saw that against Florida when he threw a couple times into double coverage, and I think one was in triple coverage. And, this is the third year in a college football program, and I understand the coaching wasn't up to par his first 2 years, and he really does have a great quarterback developer in Tyson Helton. But it just comes to a point in time you got to really display that on the field. And if he cannot do much in the first half against Auburn, I think you really have to look for a change, whether it be a Keller Chris, the graduate transfer from Stanford, or a Will McBride, or even a true freshman J.T. Stroud is getting to that point now.
I think that it would have to be Chris. I mean, he's gotten the garbage time and all this. Trout, you can always redshirt. Oh, you're still in our future. McBride, to me, I mean, what do you think the future is of Will McBride? I remember we saw him, Southern Mississippi, Missouri last year. Didn't really impress all that much when they started saying it's an open quarterback competition. I remember saying, well, wait a minute, it's not going to be Will McBride. I mean, could you have possibly imagined Will McBride, the starting quarterback against West Virginia? It's inconceivable and all that. What do you think McBride's future is on the team?
Well, no, I agree with you. I mean, he really hasn't been thought of the first few games, and that's okay. But you see a performance at Mississippi State last week when Auburn went to Starkville, and you got a guy, Nick Fitzgerald, who's basically the So,
that's one of the things. I mean, you can talk about losses to LSU or Mississippi State, but those are good teams. Now, the teams that Tennessee has lost to, also good teams, let's face it. I mean, West Virginia, Florida, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, these are good teams, Georgia. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, though, about the Auburn offense. A lot of people saying it's in regression. S&P offense, that's an analytical stat. I kind of was intrigued by this. Last year, Auburn ranked 34th in the nation in S&P offense. I can explain what that is here a little bit later on. Now they are 93rd. And I'm just curious here what your thoughts are. Why is Auburn's offense struggling?
well, I think it's simple. Gus Malzahn's offense at this level in the SEC, you have to have a quarterback that can make plays in the passing game with their arm, and also like a Nick Marshall and Cam Newton, that's good enough to not rely a lot in the running game, but when you need to, you got to do that. And that's something that's also missing with Jarrett Garantano. And that's why I think guys like Nick Fitzgerald and even Will McBride, to a degree, that has the capability of actually just moving the ball, setting up plays with their feet. When we see this with Tua, we see it with Jalen Hurts. All the good quarterbacks can do both things, and especially in Gus Malzahn's offense, you really have to have a quarterback that can do both. And right now, that's just not apparent.
They say Tennessee plays at Auburn. Did I read this right? For the first time in Tennessee plays at Auburn for the first time in 1974. I'm sorry, I was looking at the Vols Wire website, and you're looking at a historical nature of this rivalry. Yeah, I was going to say, I remember them playing in '96. I mean, in Auburn. What are you talking about? But no, tell us about that story.
Yeah, the 1974 game was the first ever time that Tennessee actually played at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. Tennessee always had Auburn play their home games in the annual series in Legion Field in Birmingham, and Auburn just said enough's enough. We have a stadium, I think it was expanded in 1970 in Jordan-Hare Stadium to about 60,000, 61,000 or so, and Auburn just got to the point where they started having Georgia and Georgia Tech always play on campus after always playing at neutral sites. And Tennessee and Alabama were the last two rival schools to not play at Auburn. And in '74, that was the first time Tennessee played at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And in 1989 was the first ever Iron Bowl on campus for Auburn.
I remember that, and yeah, people thought, Alabama fans, that the world was going to end, that Auburn could actually host that game. What is this cow college doing, hosting the mighty Crimson Tide and such? But I do want to ask that, obviously, since they do not play annually as they once did, Auburn and Tennessee, that was a big rivalry game prior to the divisional play. One of the biggest Vols victories I can ever remember, 85, defeating Bo Jackson pretty handily. And that's when you knew that something was different with that 85 Vols team. And I'm just kind of curious, where do you think the rivalry is now? Obviously, it's not going to be every year in the foreseeable future, but what does this Auburn game now mean to Tennessee fans? Is it sort of the Georgia Tech game now, or is it something more?
No, I think people are excited about it. Like you said, of course, the younger fans right now, that they don't know much about Tennessee and Auburn, even in the couple of SEC championship games that they played in '97 and '04. But I talked to Rod Bramlett, the voice of the Auburn Tigers, on a podcast this week, and he goes way back, just remembering all the Auburn and Tennessee games, and he said he wishes he's in the SEC East for Auburn, just to have that game against not only Tennessee but Florida every year, and then you could have that crossover game for Auburn to be the Iron Bowl in Alabama. But I guess the guys higher up in the SEC just don't want to see that. They don't think like that. But it is a shame that Tennessee and Auburn
Well, if you flip-flopped Auburn and Missouri, let's say being geographically correct, like what you're speaking of, that would also, if you're going to have Auburn and Alabama play each other, and why in the world wouldn't you, as that out-of-conference game, that destroys the third Saturday in October. That ends that rivalry. That makes that rivalry the new.
But at the same time, you could also, if you move to a 9-game conference schedule, you would still play every school, I guess every 3 years or whatnot, 6 years home and home. So
Well,
it just blows my mind that they don't get to the 9-game schedule and just have things rotate.
why don't we suggest this then? The SEC adding 2 teams, and I actually think that could even help Tennessee, because if you're splitting the pot up 16 ways instead of 14 ways, which I think has made the rest of the SEC, evening up the monies, if you will, but then having the huge attendance that Tennessee does, they keep that. That means that they would have a little bit more of the playing field slated to Tennessee. Do you think they'd ever, therefore, push for 16 teams in the SEC the way it's going? And then you could have, Auburn and Alabama in the East, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I think it's mostly a wait-and-see approach, because I think the SEC, I don't even really think they wanted to go 14, but they knew the landscape was there right before the playoff was implemented. And I guess eventually, maybe about 18 years or longer, if the college football playoff goes to 8 teams, then you may see teams or these conferences that are at 14 go to 16. And I don't know. I think if you just were about to pick 2 teams, I guess maybe like a Virginia Tech and either a Georgia Tech or an NC State, and then slide Missouri and Vanderbilt over to the West, I guess you could do that.
I've heard also.
What would be interesting if Virginia Tech came in and they were in the SEC East, you could have Virginia Tech and Tennessee play each year in Bristol. I think that would be pretty neat.
That would be, in theory. Of course, they'd have to do the renovations every year as well. But hey, we'd put up with that. Would they draw 150,000 every year? That's the big question. I would tend to think not. Yeah, I would tend to think not. I think that was a big fat. Dan Harralson, VolsWire.com. He is great. One of the guys. Hey, here is relation with Tyson Elton. Okay. There you are, right there.